Hey guys, welcome to the Nick Bahe YouTube page. You know what you need to do. You need to subscribe, you need to ring the bell, you need to like the page, you need to leave a comment. I appreciate you. All right, here we go. Better late than never. Bo Ruud is here, and you're probably going, where are you guys? Where are you guys right now? We've simply moved out of my podcast studio 5 feet. We're still in my basement. We're still in my house.
In the land of beige.
This is just... We do have our nice blue uplighting, you know, we're like glamour shots. We need a perm and like...
It's the most boring background any human being could have, but we brought some blue in.
I feel like, remember in Dumb and Dumber when Lloyd's trying on all his tuxes and like he comes out in the black?
That's how we feel.
And,
we feel a little bit like that.
I feel like Lloyd, and it's like... and then you come out in like the orange and it's like, yeah, Eureka. That's what it feels like right now. But so... some stuff with Fox Sports has kind of taken over my podcast studio. So we're a little like, are hermit crabs the one that change shells?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
I mean, we're basically a hermit podcast crab, and we're looking for a new shell.
Yeah, we're definitely disoriented. You know, it's like we're in Wayne's basement, but this isn't Wayne's basement. Yeah.
We're Garth, and we're just that's exactly what it was.
We're not really in. This is like,
how many analogies? Okay, so we're Lloyd and Dumb and Dumber trying on the tuxes. We're Wayne in Wayne's basement,
and we're
hermit crabs. And we're hermit crabs. That's pretty much what this is.
But it's cool because you are calling college basketball games from home, which is like, it's kind of unique now. That's almost becoming.
It's been slowly happening in the industry.
Yeah.
COVID, it kind of accelerated everything. And then, so yeah, I'm doing some more games for my basement. And so we've had to hermit crab this situation.
Yeah.
And then you had some stuff that going on where we couldn't record right away, but it ended up kind of working out because obviously the bombshell with what's going on with Frost, Trev, everything drops here. Are we ready to dive right into this thing?
I haven't talked to I've talked to a few people, but I have not spoken to you about this, and I've been dying to call you, but I figured let's save it. So we're here. The big news has arrived.
So I think the first thing I'll say is I think it's illogical, it's naive, it's stupid to think that like a not ideal situation would present great options. When you know, like 4 straight losing seasons, it's not like everything's going to be, there's going to be a great bunch of options in front of you. Yeah. So I think of all the options that were on Trev's plate and at play with Nebraska football in its future, I don't think any of them were great, but I full-fledged 100% agree with and think that keeping Frost, and now we'll talk about some of the staff changes, was the best option of all the options in front of Trev. I'd imagine you agree with that initial sentiment.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And I guess for me, and you've been on this train for a long time, at some point, because you may go, why do you think that? They've lost 4 straight losing seasons. I guess for me, like at some point you got to stop the revolving door and try to establish some semblance of continuity. Like, because it's been a revolving door since 2004 of head coaches, ADs, coordinators, ADs, coaches, AD. It's just been a revolving door. And, you know, some people go, you know, it's insanity to keep Scott Frost and expect a different result. I could argue it's insanity to stay on this higher fire cycle and expect a different result.
Yeah, for me, the thought of trying to start fresh with somebody completely different, that feels more exhausting to me than, like, with Frost, at least I understand like what I'm getting right now. And I think, okay, we see where there's a potential, we see where there's problems. I think we know what we've got in a lot of ways. But somebody new, in trying to resell yourself on this is going to be it, I feel like that just like it seems so hard to do that,
right?
More than it is Frost with new pieces. Like, that makes more sense to me than the other route.
Well, and because there's been some people, you read Twitter and you kind of read your mentions and emails. There's some people that would argue like, where was this line of thinking with Mike Riley? And to that, I say, first of all, it's not rewrite history like Riley. Like, just because Frost has struggled doesn't somehow make the Mike Riley era better. You know what I mean? Like, let's not first of all have revisionist history of how bad they were in 2017. They were getting consistently blasted, and that isn't happening with Frost. But more importantly, Nebraska didn't have the national coach of the year that is a former player lined up, potentially locked in to come. So like, I don't think the situations necessarily are
it's not even
same.
close. I mean, like they've said this in the paper a few times. Like, if Frost wasn't Frost, he would be different. But like, that's the truth, and it's okay that it's different. Like, we wanted a Nebraska guy when we hired Riley, who had no ties and had no real credentials to be worth. Like, people were pissed about that. They said, we're never doing that again. So Frost was the right hire at the right time. It hasn't worked out the way that it needed to work out, but it's still like, I don't know. I just think, like, when you look at other options, you go, it's just hard to fathom there's a better option than what they just did.
Right.
But like you see, we're talking about Riley and like, should he have been treated differently? Like, well, I don't think so. I think that was the right move, because Riley's struggles were so much on the defense and the culture of like,
and the physicality.
We weren't physical. We were getting beat badly, and we weren't even competitive. That was what people were most pissed about.
Right.
And with Frost, we're competitive.
Yes.
We just have a weird inability to win close games, and we're not scoring enough points.
Yeah, well, I mean, the offense, and that's why there's massive changes on the offensive side of the ball that we'll get to in a second. But to stick on the Riley thing for a second, this was in Dirk's column after the game, which I thought was perfect. It was basically the sentiment of the column was like, the black shirts deserve better than this, because goddamn, are those guys, that side of the ball, like, what can you say? I mean, that side of the ball is balling right now.
It's the best we've seen since
2009, 2010.
Yeah, probably that. I mean, even better than the Gregory.
I think so.
I'd say it's probably more like that.
Well, okay, so we're talking about Riley, and people wanted to have revisionist history with certain stuff, and I don't know why we're making this like a referendum on Riley. It didn't mean to take it there, but Dirk wrote this thing back in 2016 and 2017, so years 2 and 3 with Riley. Nebraska's defense allowed 16 consecutive scoring drives against Ohio State, including 14 touchdowns. Let me fucking repeat that one more time. 16 consecutive scoring drives against Ohio State, including 14 touchdowns. Don't sit there and try to tell me that, Riley, don't give me that. And again, you didn't have a homegrown golden boy that was going undefeated and was going to be the national coach of the year. Like, it's not the same.
No, it's not even close. And that's the part that, like, it's like, that's why I don't even like, it's not even a good, like, we all remember the feeling like this is not the same. What we're experiencing now is new and different, and it's not good, but it's different.
Right.
And I think that's important. But at the same time, like, so this is what's interesting is, and this is what gives me hope, is Frank Solich had a down year in 2002. I
was going to ask you about this.
His defense was given up. It just wasn't playing to the standards of the black shirts. We had a couple like Milt Tenneper is a legend. Dan Young, legend. They had gotten old.
Yeah.
They had gotten too old where, you know what, like, it's hard they couldn't recruit as much because it was just time,
the game was evolving.
Yeah, Darlington and Craig Bull, like, they were just like, they just didn't have the mojo as much as they once did. And so Frank made some tough decisions. Like, he had a down year. He made the tough calls, brought in, new coordinators in offense, but especially in defense. He brings in this young guy named Bo Pelini, Marvin Sanders, Jimmy Williams. And that team was transformed.
Right.
I'm still convinced that 2003 team was was supposed to be the beginning of something special. Because remember we like led the country in turnovers. Like those guys were so different from 2012 to 2002, 2003. I just thought, it was such and we had such a thing going. Like everybody there felt it. Like, man, we've got it. And then they fire Frank Solich after 9 wins.
Right.
And I don't know. So to me, it's like my hope for Scott Frost is what I saw in 2003 as my freshman year was, man, like things changed for the better with new assistants, right?
Right.
Some assistants stayed, but some were changed. And it was like, we found the right thing that we needed. And I think with a few more years with that crew, Nebraska, I'm convinced would have been on a different path, or in a much better path, because we all felt it. So now the question with Scott Frost going forward is, who are you going to hire?
Right, because that's the thing. So you're going there. I'll go back to something with Trev. I'm going to go back to that in a second, but you went to the changes. So I think, let's, first of all, I thought they would announce something this week. I even text you as much. I thought with the bye week, with having to recruit, you had to, you couldn't allow your coaches to go out on the road and recruit without making some sort of an announcement either way. So I expected an announcement. What I didn't necessarily anticipate was the subsequent announcement of firing 4 offensive coaches, where you fire Greg Austin, Mario Verduzco, Ryan Held, and Matt Lubick. I mean, you are gutting your offensive staff. How many? So you brought in, you said Marvin Sanders, Bo Pelini. You brought in 3
Jimmy
new coaches.
Williams, and then Jamrock stayed for defensive line. So,
but you brought in 3 new coaches,
3 new guys on defense, and then Barney Cotton became coordinator. And then,
so you had I guess I'm just trying to figure out that, because I think there's some people that are now, with all those changes, how much is it? There. Some people go, okay, there's going to be a learning curve with all these new coaches. That doesn't necessarily have to be the case if you hire the right people.
Yeah, it still might be Frost terminology. It still might be like Frost's system to a degree. And that's we're gonna figure that out by who they hire, and I'm sure what they want to do. But Frank Solich took a step back and let Barney Cotton be the offense coordinator. And I don't know how much they changed terminology with Barney, but a lot of times you don't have to change terminology. But if somebody brings in a very, very, very different system, they'll change terminology. And that would be like if they went to like some sort of power pro I formation or whatever, like they will change everything. But I don't know how much they're going to change in that sense. Like, are they still trying to run Frost's offense?
That's
right.
Like
let somebody else
I don't know.
Own it more.
Maybe if they bring in someone like Helfrich or something like that, then you would imagine some sort of continuity on that front. I don't know if that's going to be the guy. I think a lot of those conversations are I think we'll learn those things sooner rather than later. Mm-hmm. But I also think I don't know if I don't have a bunch of grand thoughts on like they need to hire this guy as your offensive line coach. I don't know. I don't know the market well enough. The one thing, what's weird is I felt like, because you and I at least text a little bit when the news hit. I think the announcement of keeping Frost, you said it, that it keeps the players engaged for the final 2 games.
Yeah.
But I think the subsequent firing of the 4 assistant coaches kind of makes it feel like these last 2 games are throwaway games. So, but did you feel, I don't know enough about how the inner workings of with this new signing period, like, is this fraud? Like, was it best for everybody to make those coaching changes now, so guys like Held and Austin, those guys can begin the process of potentially finding their next spot, and Frost can begin the process of hiring the next guys?
Yeah, I guess
I have to give them the benefit of the doubt.
The positive, the negative. The positive for those coaches is they're going to be like, their feelers are being put out. They're going to get on, like, it gives them a better opportunity. In same way, like Frost is going to be, sending out feelers to get, get somebody else hired. That's the good, I guess, of it. The bad is you don't have coaches coaching positions that are the normal guys. They're going to have people fill in, but and they're also like, those guys do a lot of the, recruiting the position groups and yada, yada, yada. So that's going to be.
I don't know how they're going to function necessarily for the next 2 weeks.
They've got the analysts that can step in, and Ron Brown's coached. Verduzco's brother is on staff, and he apparently was a offensive coordinator at some point. Like he's been a coach and a coordinator. Another guy's been a coach and a coordinator. So it's not like these are like analysts like Billy the Towel Boy that it's like, oh my God, what do I do? Hold the clipboard. Oh God, just
Billy the Towel Boy.
Or what's the guy in Hoosiers, the dad that's the drunk?
Yeah.
Who he's like, we're gonna run the picket fence. So he's like, right. We're going to be running a lot of picket fence against Iowa,
but I guess that's the thing. The positive of it, the negative of it is like you do wonder how they're even going to function the last 2 games. But to me, this week was in large part about turning the page and looking for the future. What do you think? God, there's so much to talk about here. I do think one of the things Trev talked about, whether it was in conversations with the Journal Star and the World Herald or on the radio, was Scott Frost taking a more holistic CEO approach as a head coach. He even cited times where he said, I think Scott sometimes, rather than coaching a kid as he runs off the field or in the moment, he's so preoccupied with calling the next play that he's not able to do some of that coaching. And I do think there must be some details and accountability things that have eluded the program. I think there's something to that. I've always kind of liked the coaches taking on more of that role. The question is Frost suited to do that? You know what I mean? Like, is that not playing to his strengths? Because I would always kind of like not love this was more the first couple of years. Like if there'd be a mistake on like a punt or a kickoff or something like that, and they'd ask Frost after the game, he'd be like, I didn't see it. I was busy getting the next set of plays ready to go. And it's like, man, that's not good. Like a coach should have his hands in everything. The CEO approach thing, I think though, is probably something that needed to happen, I guess.
To me, it's like, it's pretty common sense, like as a decision that's like what's going to happen. Like our problems weren't like that we don't know how to like scheme, and we don't know how to like, our problems were like special teams, penalties, clock management, game management.
Yeah, you're right.
Like, which has nothing to do with like, these are the plays I call in the moment. Like it's all about like big picture stuff that somebody needs to be doing kind of exclusively. So like, it makes sense. Like that's like, for us to fix this, you got to do that. And if you're going to do that, somebody else is going to have to take more time doing what you were doing.
Right.
Because you can't really do both, is what we found out. Like you kind of have to, like coaches can get away with being a coordinator if everything's going right.
Right.
So if it's not, you got to put your focus somewhere. And right now that makes sense to me. It's like special teams are going to be a focus of Scott Frost. Like a real, like, not like, hey, we're working on this more like we have, but like you're in charge.
I just feel like and again, it can work. I mean, Coach Osborne called the plays, like it absolutely can work.
Yeah.
But, being the offensive coordinator and calling plays and scheming defenses, that's got to take so much of your time.
It does. It takes your time and your attention. And that's where right now the attention needs to go to the big picture stuff and get that sort of like, get that squared away. And so I think there's a lot that's going to change, I think. But it's also going to depend on who we hire.
Right. And that's what makes it so hard to really kind of peek in and see what this is all going to look like. A lot of that depends on who they hire.
It is. And so like one of the big things that kept coming to my mind is like, I think there was a lot of these were good guys on the staff, and these are Frost friends, and these are, so you never feel good about somebody being fired. Not when they're good people. So it's like, you never want to, but like the reality in my mind is like, whoever you hire, they better be able to recruit, because we didn't recruit well on offense, in my opinion. I think we missed on running backs for 4 straight years.
Yes.
Gabe Irvin's pretty good, but basically it's like, I mean, I just feel like we never really
Greg Bell, Maurice Washington, Ronald Tompkins.
Tompkins was an injury that never came through. Ramirez starting to play a little bit, but he's
Ramirez,
Ramirez. He's a small guy.
He's fine.
He's fine. But, and then you got Marvin Scott, you got Sevion, who can't get on the field.
Marquise Steps, basically kind of been a whiff so far.
Transfer portal guy.
Jaquez Yant
he's a walk-on.
He's a walk-on.
He's been fine, but
the thing that'll be interesting too on these new coaches is Scott Frost is going to have to convince these guys, because basically, let's be honest, next year sets up for the thing that's too bad is it does kind of feel like next year is going to feel a lot like this year, where I think basically Frost and Trev, they kind of came to agreements like, you got one more year to get this thing right.
Yeah.
And so hiring someone, hey, come take this job and be the running backs coach. By the way, if we don't win X amount of games, this is going to be a 1-year thing.
Well, this might sound terrible, but we can improve off of this year. That's all he's going to want to see. I think Trev, next year, Nick, next year you're going to have new coaches. It's going to take time. If it's a totally new system, I don't know. Maybe they change the system. I don't know. But if they show progress, they're not going to want to move away from
I wouldn't think so, but what I'm saying is you can't have another. We don't need to get into
9 games.
You can't go 3-9 again and go, we're close.
We're close, and we're if everything keeps going the same, it's just.
And listen, we have an entire offseason to get into what is that magic number? They just need to get to a bowl game again. Do they need to get to? Does it need to be 7 or 8 wins? Is it going to be more than that? I don't know. Yeah. We'll get more into that. But I do think it is pretty amazing to think about how Frost basically, and, people can roll their eyes at big Crimea River, they're talking about he's, instead of making $20 million, he'll make whatever. But listen, that's a lot of money. He basically took a $1 million pay cut for next year, and he cut his buyout basically in half.
So
it's a $7.5 million buyout. So basically he took about an $8.5 million hit to come back,
and he had to fire some of his friends,
and fire some of his best friends to come back to do this again.
Yeah.
So
you got to get in.
So that shows how much he wants to be the head coach here.
Well, let's give a shout out to the guy that is doing everything right. You want to talk about what's wrong with
Trev's nailing this, is he not?
Has nailed every single thing he's done since he's been here. I mean, everything. Yes. He is so on it. The way he handled this, which you find out matters in life, is when guys don't handle these type of moments right, things just get exponentially worse. Trev is just he can somehow tell you the real stuff in a way that is you go, gosh, thank you for telling us that, and that makes sense.
Because he basically has said, and I got a quote here, but he basically said as much listen, there's no empirical data. History's not on our side that this is going to work. He's just keeping it real. He's keeping it real rather than sit up there. Because I think even you and I can tell you, have we seen progress? Yeah, in little areas. Certainly the defense, there's been strides in the right direction. Overall, it's hard. It's a hard argument to look into these cameras and go boy, I tell you, this is going in a great direction. This is going awesome. No, it's hard. And there's not a lot of historical evidence that shows if a coach takes over and has 4 straight losing seasons, that then this thing all of a sudden takes off and they're rolling. There's not. But let me read this quote. This is just, it's so nice to have someone in leadership just shoot it to you straight. Here's the quote from Trev. I think this is in the World Herald. He said, quote, "It's no secret that I've always wanted this to work. It would be unfair to say that I wasn't looking for a way to keep Scott as our coach. I don't think there is a clear definition. There's not a lot of empirical data out there to suggest that this will work. Let's be honest. But I also think if there's a decision point, whether it's football or anything else, Scott's a brother. He's a Husker, and he's a Nebraskan." And he goes on he talks about he has 5 words, he talks about the nameplate on his desk. He has 5 words beneath his name, and one of them is loyalty. And he says, I thought if all things being equal, if there's a decision to make, if there's uncertainty, we're going to err. While I'm the athletic director, we will probably err on the side of loyalty, but it won't be blind loyalty.
But that's such a common, like, that's how I think in so many ways. Like, I have always in my life tried to like default to loyalty. And I see so little of that in the world that like, I read that in the paper and was like, oh my God, thank you. Thank you, somebody, for thinking that way.
Yes.
And be willing to be like, this is, and he laid it out. He laid out, hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I kind of wanted. I know it's not, there's no great explanation for it other than I think it's probably the right thing to do. And I'm going to err with a Nebraskan, a former,
I'm going to follow my heart. I'm going to make sure I
And-
align with someone that I want to be with.
yeah. And I'm not going to just like stick my finger up in the wind and just let it
because that's
flow,
life.
right?
Sometimes life isn't always about, life isn't all about looking at numbers and just following what the numbers tell you.
Yeah.
And like, I know for me, I mean, we're now both 37 years old. We're relatively young, but we've got a little bit of life experience. And I think about a lot of things a lot of big life decisions that I've made. And to be honest with you, a lot of them didn't make sense from, and to use Trev's quote, an empirical data standpoint.
Yeah.
Like, I've turned down, I've had radio gig opportunities in Denver, Kansas City. I had another opportunity. And when I took the job at 1620 to do a solo show, I could have gone to the competing radio station and done an afternoon show. All of those things would have paid me more money, but I felt sometimes when you have to follow that thing in you.
I don't want to do that.
I don't want to do that. I want to make sure I'm lined up. I want to align myself with this person. I want to work with that person.
Yeah.
And, so I think in life, you make more of those decisions with your heart and your gut than you realize you do.
Yeah. If your gut's telling you like, ooh, this is like, your gut can tell you that's not the right person. And the gut can tell you like, oh, I'm not done. We're not done with this person. Right. Like,
yes.
Like Scott Frost, like firing Scott Frost right now would feel like, oh, that doesn't feel right.
No.
And that's the truth.
And a part of life is, I don't know what there's got to be a quote out there, and I'm sure I heard it, where it's just like, the most important thing to choose in life is people.
Yeah.
And making sure you're aligning yourself with the right people. Like, don't choose the whole thing. Like, don't choose the job, choose the boss, or choose who you like, the who you want to work with. And, I think there's a part of that for Trev too, where he's just like, I want to work with Scott.
But let me just tell you something. Scott Frost might not have stuck around if this was the wrong AD. If this was an AD coming, like
if this was Jamie Pollard from Iowa State and all that, and he's going, I don't know about this. And I
think Scott really feels like Trev wants him to work and he trusts what he's advising him on. Like Trev has good perspective. Trev's a smart guy. And I think Scott actually will listen to a guy like, I think that shows he respects Trev, that he's going like,
yes,
you think I need to do these things? I trust you enough to be like, these are hard things to do. Fire your own hand-selected friends and coaches. Like, that's hard. But he's putting a lot of trust back into Trev to me to go through with this.
Well, and even I love hopefully I can find it here. Even another great quote from Trev. It's almost like to the point where it's like, dang, he's being so honest that it's this is in Husker Extra. Trev said, he goes, I asked Scott this morning, and we've had lots of conversations, but I said, are you a little uncomfortable in reference to restructuring the contract and just the general magnitude of the moment? Frost said he does feel uncomfortable in a good way. And Trev replied, so am I. That's how I know we have a great deal, because both of us, and his voice trailed off. But sometimes, they kind of say in business, like the mark of a great kind of compromise is, or a great negotiation is both sides kind of like, I don't know about this. I don't know about that. But overall, you're charging forward.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the other thing is Trev is doing two things. He greatly mitigated the financial component of this thing, right? I mean, he cut the buyout in half. He gets Frost taking $1 million pay cut. Like, that's a very real thing. While, oh, by the way, there's a crane in behind his office as he's eating his like egg salad sandwiches that's building $150 million facility.
Just shoveling money from one crane to the other. No, yeah. It's a money crane. Yeah. Dropping money. Clear
$20 million coming here. $20 million.
Clear the way. Dropping money. Get your hats on, boys.
For the love of God, get your hot hats on.
Union rules. When you're dropping money, keep your hot hats on. You know the rules. Strict union rules.
Have you ever been hit by $100,000 briefcase? It doesn't feel good, okay?
Forgot the 80s because that happened so many times.
but Trev is doing, so he's like simultaneously doing all the things we talked about of like, aligning yourself, trusting your gut. He's going to err on the side of loyalty, but it's not like he just did that and kicked his feet up. He impacted the financial situation of this thing.
Yeah, so he's loyal to Nebraska. I mean, he's loyal to Scott Frost, right? So that we respect that, and I love that he's loyal to Scott Frost. But he's doing his job for the university. So, like, in a way, like the fans. I think that's a move that the fans go, "Hey, if you haven't performed to the expectations, like he took a pay cut." You know what I mean? And I think people go like, okay, like,
right.
I don't know what that does, but like firing coaches and a pay cut, as much as it like, these are things you go, oh, why should that? The fan base need to see something happen to sort of go and like to take away that buyout risk in the future. Like it sounds dumb, but
totally.
That's like, it makes sense. It's like, hey, there's got to be some sort of like, look, this is how we have to do this to move forward correctly. And now they have more money to potentially spend on new coaches, right?
And that's
where it's like they're doing all the right things.
That's the thing. There are a couple things. You couldn't run it back as it was. You just couldn't. I'm not necessarily saying it's never comfortable to call for people's jobs. I'm talking about assistant coaches. But you could not say Frost is coming back and so are all the staff. We'll see you at the spring game. Like that would have been a hard thing to sell to the fans.
Hard to do.
So you are making changes, which is good in terms of, the fans needed to see that. And then as you pointed out too, there's the financial changes of this thing, which I think definitely needed to happen. And you look at the financial structural changes on this thing. Nebraska is now going to have 2 points. This is from Sean Callahan. I depend on people to do these kinds of things for me, and then I screenshot them.
Good.
This is from Sean Callahan. He goes, with Scott Frost's $1 million pay cut and the announced staff moves today, Nebraska has $2.775 million to essentially hire a high-profile offensive coordinator and 3 assistants. The 4 coaches let go by Frost today made a combined $1.775 million in 2021. Okay. So you've increased your you've gotten a pay cut from Frost, cut down your buyout, but then you've increased the pool of money potentially to go out there and try to get some high-profile offensive coaches to bring on your staff.
O-coordinator, O-line coach, and a running backs coach.
And maybe a special team. Somebody in there might just be a special.
Somebody might go special teams, right? If you don't have a quarterbacks coach. That gives us an opportunity to make, a great position coach can change everything.
Yes.
And this is the kicker. I told you, and I said this earlier, like you go get somebody that can just flat out recruit. That might be the biggest way you impact this team. Like immediately is like, that guy's the best. Like he's a running backs coach, but he's the best recruiter in Texas. Go get him. Right. And that's where you have an extra, $200,000 to spend on him. So instead of making, a couple hundred, he's making $500,000. Those are the things that that's how you get somebody like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that, thinking about recruiting and then next year, it's amazing how I think a lot of people don't necessarily love the transfer portal and the one-time transfer rule. It just feels like it's just kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how in this moment, that might be the very thing that saves the situation.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest right now, this next recruiting class, you don't have time to develop little Timmy who's like, hi, I need a pass rusher. Yeah. Oh, boy. You don't need that guy. It's like, I just kissed my first girlfriend. I popped a zit.
I got this new zit cream, and I'm hoping it works. Oh, I have to play football.
Oh, gee, mister. I got a huge whopper.
No.
Remember, I had a zit on my nose for like 365 days.
You popped it is why.
I wouldn't have patience. You got to, I let it.
Rule number one, people. If you got a zit on the nose, you don't touch it. No matter what happens, you don't touch it. Nick Bahe, calendar year.
I mean, I kept going. I was like, it's ready. And I'd go in there and like, is there anything worse? You go to pop a zit and it doesn't pop and instead it it's bloody and it gets like.
You do it and nothing comes out and you just feel it just like swell. It's just
I think the worst.
It is the worst feeling.
Zits are like, no, I'm not going to pop. But
it's all okay. The skin. Some skin's thick and some
worst place to get a zit to me is right in between your eyes and it swells. You look like a brontosaurus. You're like.
I always didn't like the one like right by your lip because I was like,
there's
it's not what you think it is.
Michael,
it's just a zit.
Michael Scott when he had the big episode where he thought he had herpes, but no, worst power rankings zit locations. To me,
the nose lasts the longest,
to me, it's here though. It's in between the eyes because you don't get patient with that, and you're like, ooh. I mean, you were like, it's horrible.
But the nose lasts the longest. This at least will go away. You can miss and be like, it's gonna be a bad week. But you had a bad year.
I had a bad year.
Senior year.
2003 was a rough time for you, boy. Boys out there like Rudolph on that ass. But we brought up Zit Boy here. I mean, you're going in the portal because you need guys that can come in. You need a Kenneth Walker. You need dudes that can come in and make a difference right now.
It's funny. And it's like, and that to me tells us like that we missed, like we were going to like build through.
It's going to be a developmental program.
Yeah. We did like the JUCO piece together that first year. And then it was going to be like, let's build it up the right way. But then it's like, like Wandale transfers and like all our McCaffrey, like we miss. So now we're going like, God, now we just need players again that are ready to go. Right. So like transfer portal and JUCO are back in the top of our mind in the sense of like, we just don't have time to do it the way we were hoping to be able to do it.
And one of the big questions, because a part of running it back, and it'll be interesting to see, is if a part of running that back is Adrian Martinez going to be the quarterback next year.
I just have a hard time. These last two games.
Well, how about the news that he has a broken jaw? He's been playing with a broken jaw and a high ankle sprain.
Yeah. The broken jaw, I think they probably...
I don't understand how you play with a broken jaw, but that's neither here nor there.
I think you can do a lot of things if you're just willing to suck it up. I mean, I don't think it was like it was going to be like, he's hit and there goes his jaw. It was like
Chuck Liddell and Cheeto Ortiz. It wasn't like,
I don't think it's like...
Kanye West.
It might sound stupid, but like, it's one of those, it's like, I think it's going to hurt really bad in a lot of times, but I don't think it's like where your arm's broken and it's going to break more or something, or you're like, because it's different when you're like, you're at more risk to do further damage.
But it complicates.
I just don't know what,
but to me, the news of that complicates how you view.
Well, I think that's
Martinez.
Why there's a reason to me why that came out. To me, it's like they kept that secret and they probably should have.
Right.
But Adrian's been taking so much heat that like I think for his own sake and maybe for the sake of if he ever comes back, it's like this guy's been playing with a broken jaw
and a high ankle sprain.
I think since the Minnesota game, I think he was high ankle sprain.
Ankle sprain, jaw, and oh, by the way, both his tackles, like, I mean, he's under siege
so
instantaneously.
They basically gave the opponents like valuable information for the sake of like letting everybody know, like,
hey,
just so you know about Adrian, everybody kind of has to go, yeah, that's right.
It's just to be interesting to see, like,
but yeah, that's,
I would say right now, my gut tells me you are going to have a different starting quarterback in 2022. That's my gut.
A new coordinator is a big part of that too.
Right.
But this is back to the Frost system next year. It could very well be Adrian Martinez. If it's a different system, like, LSU brought in I think is something Barry maybe was his coach. he came from I want to say he came from like the Rams.
Yeah.
And he came there, it was like 1 year. And then
With Burrow, him and Burrow.
And Burrow, and it was like done deal, changed everything.
Yes.
But like he brought in his system, right? So it'll be interesting if we like we could sneak somebody from the pros, if that's like, because sometimes that's a good recruiting tool as well. So it could go a lot of ways, but that will affect Adrian as well.
Be interesting to see. Again, my gut tells me that it's probably got a different quarterback next year, but like you said, it's a good point. I didn't think about the fact that maybe depends on who they hire and what system they have moving forward. He's got, it's just Adrian. I'm not sure there's a guy. I feel like I'm certainly not Bill Walsh or Bill Parcells or Bill Belichick, but I don't deem myself as an idiot when it comes to football. I don't know what to think of Martinez. I don't know what to think of. I know what a talented player looks like. He's got talent. But I don't know. We've had that conversation a million times, but it's going to be interesting to see.
He's the best player that I've seen that can't win a game.
There you go.
And I mean that maybe in my life, like he's the best quarterback I've seen that like he truly can't win a game. And I go, I don't know that I've seen this type of thing before. Usually it's like somebody is obviously worse than he is to have the kind of record that he's had. 4 years of that, right? I mean, I don't know what you make. I don't know what
it's
you make.
It's bizarre, but it'll be interesting to see if he comes back next year, if it's going to be a complete new look thing.
What do you think about all the like? They say like, oh, these like 6 or 7 or 8 guys in our team that might go pro. Like, what do you think of that? Even like, is that like legit? Like, am I missing something? Like, other than Cam and maybe JoJo? Like,
right? I don't know. I don't see a lot of. Yeah, because are you talking about some of the guys that could sit out the last 2 games or leave early?
I mean, I've heard like between Austin Allen,
Daniels. To me, the only I would think we're talking about Austin Allen. You're talking about Daniels. You're talking about Cam Taylor-Britt. You're talking about JoJo Domann.
But then they're talking about Caleb Tanner. They were talking about Adrian. They're talking I'm like. I didn't think those guys were even being considered for the pros, really. Like,
I would think JoJo
is.
I think JoJo's played his way into.
JoJo is.
I mean, especially like he played his best game he's ever played against the best competition of the season in Ohio State. He was awesome in that game.
Yeah, JoJo's been good,
but I don't know. It's just going to be so interesting to see not just because it's not just a Martinez conversation, just what the roster looks like next year and what guys that can come back will come back. Because you also wonder from Adrian's perspective, does Adrian want to just?
I think this year's probably been a lot for him because it's not gone the way he wanted to. But at the same time, like, he's also invested a lot into this place too. So I think for him, it would be probably hard to just like, I'm going to go try somewhere else as well. Because then you have to relearn a system, and it took 4 years to get like as comfortable as he is with it. But it's also sometimes you just want a fresh start too. So I don't know. We'll see what that holds, but
I just, again, to circle back to the top, I think this was the right move to make. And I get that it's gotten to be a polarizing topic, but at the same time, I think there are more people. I think more people wanted this than didn't want this. I think more people wanted to see Frost come back than didn't. I think the didn't crowd is a little bit more vocal.
The Fire Frost crowd is no doubt louder and no doubt in my mind smaller.
Yes,
a smaller piece of the Nebraska fan base.
And so, like you said, I mean, and we've talked about this. Like, if this was any other coach, if this wasn't Frost, if this wasn't a homegrown Husker legend, national title winning quarterback, would you feel this way? And it's like, well, probably not. But he is all those things.
He is, and he has, like, you want to talk about talent? Like, Scott Frost has a lot of talent as a coach. He is a really good play caller. He is really good with the team. Like, he's good at
the right thing to say and all that stuff.
Yeah, addressing the right thing. I think he's really good at like running like teams that are like guys that are like good technique. Like we really like we were strong, physical. Like we're doing a lot of the things right. The things I think Trev has hinted at that like they're going to focus on, he's going to have to develop.
Right.
And he has the talent to develop it. Like he has that, I think, the ability, which some coaches might not. And I think that to me is like where I go, I trust in some of Frost's, his ability to grow.
Right.
Because if you didn't think he could grow, like what's the point, right?
That's it.
He's got to have the ability to grow. And I think he's got talent. He could do it. But there's just definitely changes had to be made. You just can't keep doing what we did. This was the change. I think it's the right move. It's hard to see those coaches go, but like, I'm a little.
Listen, the proof is in the pudding in terms of the output with that side of the ball.
In the end, like they couldn't recruit like the players they needed, and they couldn't, like those position groups were across the board the worst position groups.
That's exactly right. Exactly. If we start writing down worst position groups in terms of recruiting, development, and performance, you're writing down running backs, you're writing down offensive line,
wide receivers,
yeah. And then the reality is probably quarterback too, because for as much as we talk about with Adrian, like they never had a second option.
Nope.
You know, I mean, you brought it up, like Oklahoma, Spencer Rattler can struggle and they bring in another guy and he can do it.
And he's now you have a first round draft pick that goes out, and the next guy comes in and like, I think he's a first round draft, so it's that makes life a lot easier.
Totally.
You got to go get those guys.
You absolutely do. So again, I think this whole time, of all the options, it was like fire Frost, keep Frost and run it back, or keep Frost, make staff changes. I always felt like the most likely of those three was keep Frost, make staff changes, and that's what's happened.
Yeah. Were you expecting it to be this degree? Like they whacked four?
I didn't know. I didn't think it would be all four guys.
I guess the Lubbock thing is
a little surprising.
It's telling to me that they didn't feel like that was like that something made a big enough difference. Yeah.
Yes, because something obviously wasn't working with him, because he just got here. So I know he wasn't on my radar of a guy that was going to get potentially on the chopping block, but he did.
Sean Beckton stayed. Tight ends have played well.
Yep.
And that dude recruits.
Mm-hmm.
He goes down to Georgia. He goes down to Florida, and he pulls guys out. Like, I mean, I think he got Cam Taylor-Britt, Gabe Irvin. He's a great recruiter.
So he's recruited well. His position has performed. So he's still here.
Kept his job. So to me, it's like that's what they're going to go. They're going to go hire. Hopefully, like an OC that's got some juice. Somebody that's got has the stuff, whether it's pro or is just has a great pedigree. And then the rest of these dudes better be able to coach and recruit
the transfer portal initially. Because that's the other thing too, is like this December early signing period has changed everything. Because I think for me, when I first saw it, because it'd be really weird as a player, and you have 2 games left and your position coach gets fired. That would be like, wow. I mean, holy crap. But I do think that we talked about this, that the December signing period, the urgency at which you have to get your staff together, you got to get the recruiting class together, like everything's just moved up. And so I think that's why you've seen LSU, they fire Orgeron in the middle of the season. USC fires Helton in the middle of the season. Yeah. Texas Tech fired their guy and just hired their new guy in the middle of the season. TCU announced that they got rid of Gary Patterson. Like, I think a lot of that in a roundabout way has to do with the December early signing period. You need to have all your ducks in a row as fast as possible to make sure that you can make sure that, because if you're not ready to go for that early signing period,
it's just like, it's so much now depends on this recruiting aspect of it that we were talking like, we knew they had to at least say like, Frost's our guy for another year. Like, you can't put him into,
right,
November, December without that. But like, I guess I was still surprised you fire coaches.
Like, so was I wasn't expecting that. But again, I would have to assume, because I don't think I would think there's got to be a reason for it. I mean, maybe it shows that
their recruiting class, Nick, though, they got like 8 guys.
Right.
And there's no like real like stud of the class. So it's like, I guess for them, it's like, what are we going to lose? Like,
but do you think they made the move to fire the 4 coaches now? Is that a move to satisfy the fans now?
Yes.
Because I don't know about that. Like
it is, yes, but it's also to go get a coach sooner.
And it maybe allows those guys, Greg Austin, those guys can begin the process of figuring out what their next gig is.
And then it's like you basically, if you can get a guy hired, or if you can't, you basically say like this. I know you're a little hesitant about us because we were making changes and it's going to go. It's another story to tell in recruiting too, which is like sad. That's part of it, but like it's all those things that actually like. It makes sense. The downside is you have to coach a game with less assistance. So they can do it. I mean, these other people can help.
I don't think the reality is like, I don't think these next few games matter a ton.
They don't matter, but
I hate to dismiss them completely.
You can do it. These guys have played a whole season. Like, how much are they going to change the last couple of weeks? Like, not that much. They have their system.
Right.
It's like these guys will walk them through film, coach them up a little bit. But like, really, it's like, they've been through most of the season. Like, you're in the routine. It's not like you're like, what do I do without a coach?
And I'd have to imagine, at least for some people, now I don't know how many people necessarily are there, and if their position coach leaves, they're going to leave. I mean, there might be a few, but I'd have to imagine, because you talked about this in our last recap pod, that like you were a senior in 2007, and when the cloud hangs over the locker room of your coaches might be on the way out, that impacts how engaged you are and your everyday approach to things. I'd have to imagine there's a large portion of players in that locker room, almost everybody, that can breathe a sigh of relief in terms of their underclassmen, knowing that their head coach is going to be back next year.
Yeah, I think, obviously nobody wants to see their position coach go for the most part, but it's in a lot of ways, it's almost better to be like, for them to be gone than them to be there as coaches, like distraught. I've seen the coaches when they're down and out and they're not into it like they should, and the game plan comes in, you're like, what is that?
Right.
Like, that's worse than them not being there. It's sad to say. That's true, though. Sometimes it's better to have them out and let somebody else sort of
it's a good
jump
point.
in. Like,
it's a good point.
I was shocked, but like, I think the more they got a few people that are going to cover. I think it'll be okay.
It'll work. I mean,
we'll see. I mean, we'll see how they perform. But
the other thing, real quick, of all the people that Frost may have to make sure re-recruit and make sure it doesn't leave, is Chenander on that list? I feel like there's loyalty there, I think. But I just wonder, like, I'd imagine there's got to be some other coaches and other programs that are going, look what this guy did.
That's a good question.
Because these defensive numbers
they've been good.
I mean, really, really impressive. Like, I mean, they're 14th nationally in stop rate, which is just percentage of drives that end in a stop.
Yeah.
If you take away the 27 points that Nebraska's offense and special teams errors have gifted their opponents, the Huskers would have a top 5 scoring defense nationally at 15.6 points per game.
Shoot.
Like, I think there's a chance people are going to be sniffing around chins a little bit.
But you think this
Sniff
is like you think a bigger program is going to come and offer just more money?
Maybe. Because I don't know if he has head coaching aspirations. I don't know if he would, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, there's a lot, whether a Travis Fisher, an Eric Chenander, I don't know.
Fish is like, people made runs at him because he can recruit. He's a good coach. He's kind of always, I don't know. We'll see. I just
throwing it out there.
I think we've lost enough that it's a little bit harder, I think, for any of these coaches to be like a hot commodity. Always
that's a good point.
Teams that win the national titles, all their coaches get jobs,
and
right?
I also think like he, at the end of the day, Eric Chenander is at Nebraska, which is, a big high profile job. And he's got it. He's that side of the ball. He's kind of got it going. Like, it takes a lot of work to get your stuff
paid
going.
Well. I mean, he gets paid well as it is. It's not like, there's a handful of schools that maybe would pay him more, and I don't think they're going for him. And so it's like, and I don't see him going to like a real small school to be a head coach, because that's right. Right now, he's not going to go to a big school as a head coach. He's not there yet.
No.
Right. Like, if we won for 3 or 4 years,
right, you can't.
He could become a candidate. But like, Nebraska goes 3-9. Like, let's get that guy. You know, like
that's good. I hear you.
It's hard to make that kind of jump in my mind.
And then just to puke in your mouth a little bit, this is from Husk guys going over special teams this year.
Yeah.
Nebraska's special teams have 8 missed field goals. They've missed 4 PATs. They've had 3 punts travel less than 20 yards, had a nice 13-yarder against Ohio State that set up a touchdown. Gave up a punt return for a touchdown. We were in Vegas, crocked watching that. Kind of ruined our Vegas night. Had a PAT blocked and returned for 2 points. And they have 30 punt return yards total in 10 games. Our boy Santino Panico, I believe, had 68. So the guy that was the running joke is Mr. Fair Catch, Santino Panico. Like, he has double the punt return yards. And so, I mean, it's just, and again, Frost made the comment in the post-game presser of saying, like, basically said, listen, we don't have a special teams problem. We have a specialist problem.
To a degree, but it's also like I feel like,
it's true.
Is there any hope to return a punt or a kick?
0.
That's a problem to me. That's a problem when you don't. Maybe that's a specialist problem a little bit too, but it's also.
But that's a problem.
It's a mindset thing. So we've had all-time bad kicking and punting this year.
And that's why I know close is the buzzword of the year, and there's some people get upset, like, they're close, they're not. What does close even mean? I mean, you give them a competent punter and kicker. I'm not even saying you give them, Adam Vinatieri and the greatest punter in the and my boy Darren Erstad. Shouts out to Darren Erstad. I'm not saying you have to give them the best of the best. You just give them competent punters and kickers. They might have wins over Oklahoma and Ohio State.
Big Ten average. If you probably went and did, like, I'd love to see this, like the Big Ten average, like punting and kicking margins, and like put those with us. Like, do we win 3 more games? Like punt returner, like the fact that Cam Taylor-Britt like started our year out like that, and then we basically were like, Oliver Martin can catch. Let's just have him go catch everything.
Right.
Like. That sort of like all that combined, like, is that 4 wins more?
It could be, honestly. So that's where I feel like there's just you get competent punting and kicking. You tighten up a few things. They might have at least 2 more wins over 2 teams that are like in the playoff potentially.
Oh my God, it's just
so that's where it's, and I mean,
it's
they're
so hard.
the whole argument of, are they close? Are they not? Like, what are these moral victory cards and all that?
It's just been such a unreal season. It's been unreal.
It really has been.
It's been unreal. So like, sometimes people probably, me and you, we really try to, like, I don't know, maybe defend things too much, but like at the same time, like, you can't tell me you're not watching this and going like, what is going on? Even though it's usually more obvious to me than like, how can't we just do that?
I know. Usually, like, it is, you couldn't even, if you took a football team and tried to do what they do, like, hey, what you're going to do is you're going to be in every game, but you're going to dominate. You're going to dominate some games, but then there's going to be like 2 plays that go catastrophically bad. And you got to know when to make those 2 plays, and then you need to lose by 1 score. Like, I guess what I'm getting, it's like, you couldn't do this if you tried.
Yeah. Usually the teams that are so bad at those things are bad all the time, and they lose big a lot.
Right.
And we're like bad at those things
situationally in the worst possible time.
At the worst times, and we lose barely.
It's been, so that's the thing. It's like, listen, people that listen to our podcast, you get some people, it's like, you guys, I mean, you guys aren't willing to be, and it's
you're
like,
homers.
Maybe. I mean, I also think, like, just because we want Frost to come back, it's like, oh, you like this? You like going 3-9? It's like, no, I don't like going.
If you're not a homer as a Nebraska fan, like, well, are you a Nebraska fan? Like,
well, and I also think, like, you don't have to equate, like, just because I want Scott Frost back doesn't mean that I'm pleased with what has happened No. So, like, but people say, oh, you like losing football.
But we also you don't want to jump off like the cliff into the bad place over everything. You want to be, as rational as you can, and just and try to see the positives sometimes, because it's like, it's not always as bad as it seems.
Like I said, I think At some point, you got to stop this revolving door. At some point, it's got to stop.
I like that Trev put his foot in the door and Jerry rigged
like our friend Bub when he stopped a ceiling fan at a party in 7th grade and he impressed his girlfriend with it. It was pretty big, but that's basically what.
He's still a legend for that.
But that's at some point you got to stop the revolt. I mean, think about so since 2003 to that. I mean, you've had how many ADs? Stevie
1,
P,
2, 3, 4. This is our
fifth AD. You've had Frank Solich, Bill Callahan, Bo Pelini, Mike Riley, Scott. You had your 5th coach.
5.
And like at some point you got to stop the revolving door. And like I said, some people say you're insane to bring Frost back and expect a different result. And to me, I could flip that on you and say you're insane if you think you can continue to just drop an A-bomb on the program every 4 years and think that you're going to get a different result.
You can't tell me the fastest route to winning again isn't what we're doing.
That's what I think.
A rebuild will take longer.
That's what I think.
Period. I know it.
By the way, this is just a thought that I've had for a while. Like, do you think on some level the fact that the defense is good impacts Trev's thoughts? Like, probably makes him feel better. Like he said there's no secret.
Frost doesn't have a job if the defense is,
like I wonder if everything's flipped. Like
doesn't have a job.
Like I wonder if Trev, like he's such a defensive guy that he's just like.
But this is what matters in football, and this is what I guess was my point earlier about Riley. Like, football is about toughness and like attitude,
physicality,
culture,
yeah,
and those things usually show themselves on defense first.
Right.
And that's why I think a lot of Husker fans want us to be like a power running team because that's where you see it on an offense. But you get fired if your team gets blown out. You get to change your staff if you're not scoring enough points.
There you go.
And I think that's always been the difference to me is like, Solich went 9-3, but Kansas State scored too many points.
That's it.
You're fired. Colorado scored too many points the year before. Same way with Pelini. He was getting blown out by Wisconsin. So he wins 9 games and they fire him.
I want to try to get this.
Riley.
Quote. No, it's a good point because it's a lot more when the defense is good, because that's such a good point. I thought like there is just like when your defense is good, that's usually a direct line of what football is usually about. And
fans feel more pride when you're a tough team.
Right.
If you're tough and you play defense, there's like at least you feel like you have self-respect or something.
And I'm trying to find like here's Trev's quote along those lines. Trev said this was before the Michigan game.
Yeah.
He said, to me, fundamentals can be taught. The hardest thing about flipping a culture is getting guys to be willing to lay it out on the line when you really don't want to. We have that. Even in those games we lost, those guys are fighting, and that is the most important thing. You have to start with the fight. We're not intimidated or scared, and then we're taking incremental steps in those key areas like special teams, penalties, and turnovers. You're always going to have mistakes. It's a part of the game, but it can't define who you are. I think that, so Trev's whole thing is like, it starts with the fight. It starts with the fight. I ask you if you could somehow take the spirit of this team and bottle it up, and somehow take the spirit of the 2017 and bottle it up and put them in like a cockfight.
Yeah.
Who would win?
Well, it's not even close. I mean,
and that is
it was immediately noticeable as soon as the first game. I remember it was the Colorado game, 2018.
Right?
Our defense, didn't even look close to how much more physical and sound they were compared to Riley's just bleed through defense, where it was embarrassing.
And the good thing is that's not the standard that, it's just like, you just got to be better than Riley. No, I mean, I think it's clear, you look at some of the defensive stat, it's the fight is there.
Yeah.
Like the fight, the physicality, those things are there. But I wondered that. I didn't think about, you applied it in a different way. I made silly analogies like, when you're on The Voice and Pharrell, he probably only cares about the production because that's what he knows, rather than I think Trev, when you're a defensive guy, you're gonna view that stuff first.
Yeah.
But I didn't think about the fact for football and its long-term sustainability.
Fans will accept a team losing if the defense is good and you are competitive and tough.
Agree. Anything we're missing?
I think we went deep.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
it's
that
a little
whole
over an hour.
Ohio State game.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, real quick on that. I mean, I thought it was the right move at the time to kick the field goal, 23-17.
I thought it was. I mean,
Your defense had played
take
great.
the points.
Yeah, there was. I could, if there were, say, instead of, I want to say there was like 9:40 something left or 9:51 left in the fourth quarter. If it was 5 minutes left, or like maybe that
Because they were down
23
6.
they were down 6.
Yeah, so down 6. You got plenty of time.
Your defense had been playing great.
You take your 3. I mean, I just don't know how you don't take the 3. Like 4th and 4. It's not 4th and 1. It's 4th and 4.
4th and 4
against Ohio State. That's a long 4.
Right. And I get it. You can say, well, look at your field goal kicker situation. I don't know.
I mean, to me,
all
like,
fair, but
you kicked, I think at least he was consistent. Like he was kicking field goals that day. The damn guy missed 2.
Yeah. Was there any other big takeaway from that game? I mean, the defense played great.
No, we're
in
Wayne's basement.
This is so, look at us. We're looking at the camera. I mean,
not-
we look terrible. Don't we?
Oh, you got the blue light.
We got the blue light going here, but this
Right.
isn't very good. I mean, we'll make it work, I guess.
Is this forever?
I hope not. Well, we should spruce up this stuff. Put our
Yeah, we need to get our stuff.
Jay-Z and our Kevin Costner stuff going here a little bit. Okay, well, there you go. It's been an emotional week here.
To Trev Albert.
To Trev, keeping it real.